Right. So I think we can resume the session now. Actually,
Oh,
I got a good question regarding the tables, actually, right? So, as Petro mentioned, that when you are working with customization, that we cannot make sure that the table is empty. So there might be rows, and at that point, there is a concern on adding a new column to the particular table because we are not allowed to do so, right? It means if there is a table with data, and if you are trying to add a new column to that particular table which is having data, then Oracle will not allow us to do so. But the thing is, there is a way that we can handle that situation. So what we can do is one way. Actually, there are two ways that I'm going to discuss. So I'll share you the first way that we can do. When we are creating our CDB file and when we are deploying the relevant column to the table, here we can give a default value when we are deploying the relevant column to a particular table. It means that in TRN inventory tab, if we try to deploy this name column to the TRN inventory tab table, what we can do is we can give a default value when we are trying to deploy here. So we can put a comma, right? And then I'll show you how we can add a default value. If it's a number, if that column intake numbers, then what we can do is we can have single quotation, and inside of that we can have the number. So if we mention it as 0, then like this way we can put, right? We can have single quotation, and inside of that we can have the number like this if it's number, right? So then for that particular column, for the name column, we will be having a default value deployed to the database with 0, right? But if it's a string, what we can do is we can have it like this, right? So within the single quotes, we can have double quotes like this, and inside of that we can have whatever we are trying to enter like this, right? We can have separate single quotes and then we can have double quotes. Inside of that, we can have the default value that we want to put to that particular column. But the thing is, there's a recommended way that we can do rather than doing this in the insertion script, right? So this is something that we can do in the table script. But there is a recommended way to handle this scenario rather than using it in here as a parameter rather than passing a default value from this end. There is another way we can do it, and it's actually more clear than this. I'll show you how to do that, but this is also a way that we can do, right? So for now I will not apply this here because in our scenario we don't have any uh, value in our table, so I'm not putting any default value in this point. But the thing is, I'll later show you the recommended way of adding a default value to a particular table, particular column if the table contains any value, right? So let's keep it for a moment, right? This is one way. Actually we can pass a parameter here and enter value. That's one way. But the thing is, there is another way we can do the same thing in an easier manner, if I guess so, like, right? So it's in a easier manner we can handle this situation in a clear manner as well, right? So let's discuss at that point, but this is also one way that we can handle such situations. Right. Now we are able to complete up to this part. So the question number 4, need to add a sequence to generate inventory IDs automatically from the inventory logical unit. So there are some points given for us, some hints, right? What kind of scenarios that we need to follow in order to get this up and running. So if I go through these things quickly, so we are asked to create a sequence creation script, and that point, like we have to have it in TRN inventory cost storage file. So in the storage file, we are asked to apply a sequence creation script. And then there is something like here as a hint as well. So after generating, we have to apply it to the CDB file and deploy it to the database. So there is something that we need to take care of. And the second point, it's mentioning us that we need to modify column comments to remove mandatory and insertable flags to take care of the situation of the inventory ID in the model. So we'll try to see how we can do that as well, how to take care of that part. And then there is another point that is mentioning us. So we have to modify the code insert method. And there we are asked to have the inventory logical unit to use the sequence that we have created with the inventory ID and return a value to the client application or the client window after insertion completes, right? So there also we have got some points as hints. So how to work with TRN inventory cust PLSQL, and we are asked to override the insert method. So now I hope that you got some points regarding these methods, because yesterday and day before that when you are going through the things we have been discussed these methods. So here we are asked to override the insert method, and we have to use this add to ATTR method, which is coming from the client sys package, and we are asked to return the inventory ID to the client application. So these are some points that is given for us as hints, right? So following these things, now let's try to create a sequence, right? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to not to follow the same steps, but I'll go with my order, right? Maybe you can follow the same order. So later on, if you prefer the way that we have mentioned in the workshop document, you can go in that way. But I'll go with something like a bit different, but same steps, right? The order will be bit different. That's the only thing that I'm going to change, right? But the instruction, the way that we are developing, it's same. The order is getting bit different, or like I'm going to do some shuffle on the order. That's the only thing I'm going to do, right? Okay, so we are asked to add a sequence to the inventory ID. It means rather than manually getting the values to the inventory ID from an end user, we are asked to create the IDs from the application. It means it should be auto generated, and we should be able to um, visualize them in the client application when we are doing the development. It means the auto generation part should be there. It means the ID should be auto generated, and at the end, once we done with our the deployment, we should be able to visualize it to the end user that this is the inventory ID which is auto generated from the application, right? Those are the requirements. Now let's go step by step how to handle this situation. Right. So the first thing I will do is I'm going to remove the flags, right? So in the workshop document also, I think it's mentioned to in the second point. It means modify the column comments, remove the mandatory insertable flags. So what I will do is I will complete this part as the first step, right? So in order to do so, now let me quickly go to TRN inventory entity. Okay, we have a structure. We have the inventory ID which is created here. But the thing is, guys, I explained that we are not allowed to do any changes to the core layer because we are working with the customization layer. So we are not allowed to do any change in this layer or the core layer. If you want to do any kind of change, what we need to do is we have to get this thing to the cust layer. Now, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to get a copy of this. I'm going to get a copy of it, and I'm going to have it in my attribute section like this. I got a copy from my core entity and I pasted it here, right? So maybe we can have a small formatting like this. Now, in this part, what I'm trying to do is I will remove the insert flag. It means that I'm preventing the end user to enter any kind of inventory ID value from the client application. That's why I remove the I flag from my flag section here. And also guys, now even though we have removed the I flag, still there's a small issue actually, right? So we have mentioned it as mandatory so that even though we removed the I flag, still the mandatory flag is there. So the client application will expect input to the inventory ID before saving the particular record, right? If we keep the mandatory flag here, what will happen is, even though we are not having the I flag there, still the client application will expect a input from the end user because it's a mandatory, we need to give a value. So the client application will expect a value there so that we will not be able to save a particular record to our database because the flag is mandatory. So that we have to remove the M flag as well. So then only we will be able to save it from the client application without any issue. Right? So we have removed the flag because we are not accepting a number or any inventory ID from the user, because from a sequence we are trying to generate it automatically. And also, in order to prevent the expectation of the inputs from the client application, we have to remove the mandatory flag as well so that we will be able to save the record even though we are not entering inventory ID from the client application. Right. So once we're done with this part, I will save it. So you can see now there are some changes happen in our files. So there are a set of files that is getting generated again. The entity is getting generated, APV is getting generated, APY is getting generated, and also the base VLSQL base view file got generated as well. Let me quickly take you with the APV file to show you the change. So if you go to APV file, guys, there you will be able to find some comments or the column comments that is applied for the table. So under the name, you will be able to see that. Okay, so we have the inventory APY, and I think let me again generate this quickly. Right, we got it generated. Now you can see the file set is generated here. Then if we go to the APV file, you will be able to find some comments that is relevant to the table, right? So here under the inventory ID, now you will be able to find that flags, we will be having it as key and list of value. Other flags, now they are not there, right? So other data, it's there, the prompt value, the number, the data type is a number, but the flag, we have removed the mandatory and insertable flags. Now it's shown like this, right? That's the first step I'm going to do using I'm going to remove the flag. So if you are able to remember now, when I'm trying to generate this code, when I'm trying to save my changes, APV and APY files got changed. So even though here the entity I'm doing a change to the flag, I still don't need to apply it to the CDB file because there is no change applied to the CRE file, right? So for the CRE file, we are not doing any kind of change, so that we don't need to apply it to the CDB file because we are only changing the flags. Flags will be referred to the APV and APY, right? So these two files will only get affected from that change so that we can simply generate code and deploy, right? So let me just generate code and deploy this. Okay, without any issue, we are able to deploy them to the database. Now, we only did one step of creating the sequence to the inventory ID. We just only changed the flags here, but there are other things that we need to take care of. The second thing is, now once we're done with this, right? Once we are removing the flags, and the next step is that we need to create a sequence step, script, right? Sequence script. My bad, guys, right? Okay, so sequence script instructions are given here. What we need to do, right? So we have to create a sequence creation script in trn inventory cost storage file. And once we get it generated, we have to make the consistency with the CDB file, and we have to deploy it to the database. So let's try to create a sequence now. So where we can create the sequence is in the storage file. So if you don't have the storage file in your file set, what you can do is you can have it in the add source. So in here, you should be able to get a source file if it's not in your list, right? So you can add the storage file. So in my scenario, I have the storage file. I can apply the sequence script to this storage file, right? So actually I have already created that, right? So I'm going to just copy it and I'll explain it as well, right? So under other definition, I will have it as sequence. So how to generate the sequence script is, we have to have the sequence keyword. Then we have to provide a name for the sequence. So here I named it as trn inventory ID seq, and it should be increment by 1, and I'm starting it from 10,000. So this is how we can create a sequence script. We are making it as increment by 1, and we are starting it from 10,000, right? So let me quickly have these points in the scripts as well, guys. So it will be easier for you. So here I'll have it as sequence script or something like that. Okay, okay, that's fine. Let me have it, the sequence script. So you should have it in the storage file, right? So I'll apply this to the script as well. And I'll save it. So you are able to get it from the shared location, right? Okay. Now we have created the script, right? So this should be created in the storage file. So these are the keywords that we have to use, and the name we can give it as any name we like. Once we add the sequence statement, we can generate our code. If we save it, it will automatically generate it, but I will just generate it from here as well. Now you can see there are some files getting generated, and you can see the change was affected to .entity file and .cre file. So if I go to cre file now, let me find it. Okay, here. So there is a new section generated as sequence definition, and in there you will be able to find a sequence creation script which is generated from the IDE or the Developer Studio in the cre file. But the thing is, as I emphasized a couple of times in previous exercises as well, that we cannot deploy the cre file in the customization layer projects. If we want to do any kind of database changes, then we need to apply them into the CDB file. So this created script needs to be applied to the CDB file. What we can do is we can get this copied and paste it in the CDB file, right? So let me copy it. I'm getting it with the sequence definition section as well, right? So let me go to the CDB file. I will put it somewhere around here, and I will remove the comments. We don't need the comments. Right. So I will have a heading for this one as well to make it more clear. We can get the tree file, and there I think we had the, yeah, I'm getting the heading to make it more clear, right? So I'll have it around here. So now we know that table definition section is this one and the sequence definition section is this one. So once we apply the sequence script, which is generated in the tree file, we can apply it to the CDB file and we can deploy this to the database. Right? The CDB got deployed. And then we can generate the code and deploy the TRN inventory entity as well. Okay, without any issues, we are able to get it deployed as well. And to make it more clear, so adhering to the IFS coding standards, I will be having a small comment here based on what I have done to the CDB file, right? So my username I will be using here, and I have added the sequence script, right? So I will have a comment on that as well. Sequence, the name. Okay, I'm getting a copy of here. Maybe sequence, okay, write this. Okay. Now, we have completed 2 sections that we are asked to do. We have created a sequence creation script, and also we have removed the mandatory and insertable flags from the inventory ID attribute or the key, right? From the model. We have done these 2 changes successfully. Now, we need to find out a way to apply this change or to use the sequence that we have created. So even though we have created a sequence creation script, still we haven't used it in our development. So we need to find a way to use it in our development. So that is the third step that I'm going to explain now. So it will be explaining here as well, but I will explain it my own way and we can get back to the point after that. So we need to find out a way to use this code use this sequence in our development. So how to do that? Now inventory ID we need to give a default value or auto generated value, not the default value, actually it's a auto generated value. So that we have created a sequence. Now I'm going to use that with my TRN inventory ID. So the inventory ID attribute, I'm going to use the sequence with this attribute. In order to do that, I need to find out a way, or I need to find out a particular method which we can apply the change. So in the hint also which is given us that we are asked to override the insert method and we are asked to use the attribute add to attribute attr method which is coming from the client sys package, and at the end we are asked to return the inventory ID to the client. So those are the instructions that is given to us, right? So we'll see how to handle it. So when we are using the sequence, one way is we can add the sequence when we are trying to add a new record to a table. So let me show you using the application. Maybe that will clear to you. Okay, so we have our application. Right. Okay, so here, let me try to show you with an existing window. Yeah, I think it got stuck. Right, give me a moment until it recovers back. So other than until that, I can explain you some scenario from my end, right? So actually, when we are applying a record, so we have two ways actually getting uh, a ID generated. One way is when we are trying to add a new record to a particular tab or a particular table. When we are trying to insert that record, at that point, we can add that ID generated, and after that we can fill the relevant columns and then we can save it. That's one way. The other way around is we can save all the, I mean, like we can provide all the information, then we can save it, and later on, it means after saving it, we can show the generated ID to the client or the end user. Actually, the second way is more like useful because guys, sometimes when we are like auto generating it into the prior, I mean prior to saving it, right? So we might be getting like we are when we are trying to add a new record from our application, then we will be getting an ID, then we are filling other records, other information, and we feel okay, we are not going to save it, we are canceling it. So then what will happen is that ID will not be generated again because we are going through a sequence. Then when we are trying to add another record, the next ID will be applied to that location. So that previous ID will be get wasted. So that rather than using that way, better if we can go with once we save the record, then based on the saved inventory ID, we can show it back to the end user. So then it will not waste any sequence IDs because once we save it to the database, only we will be showing it to the end user through the client application. So how we have to take care of it is we can do some changes to the insert method, right? So if I go to the APY file, I hope you have some sort of an understanding about insert method, implementation method. So there we are able to insert value to the relevant table, right? So what we can do is we can do some changes or we can override and apply our change to this insert method. And then after inserting the ID to the table and we are able to get it and we are able to show it in our client application. So that's what we are trying to do in this part. So what I'm trying to do here, I will get it with the LU specific implementation method section because we are working with the implementation method. There I'm trying to override. So I'm going to use control space in order to get some help from, I don't think it will work. Okay. O should be capital. Right. Override. Right. So we can give the relevant method that we are trying to override. So IntelliSense, we are getting the help. So we can get the suggestion. So I'm going to override the insert method. So let me get the support from here. Let's see whether we can get the insert method. Right. Here we have the insert method and currently it is in the base layer because no one has already done any kind of customization to the insert. We can get this. So once we get it generated here, you are able to see kind of like this skeleton. We are getting parameters, the procedure names, and in between begin and end, we are having a section like this. So pre-processing section we have on top, and we have a super call going into our base method. And here we have post-processing section as well. Right. So let me explain you what is this super call actually. So there is a already implemented method which is generated in our APY. So in insert, we have a base method which is generated here already. So from the super call, what will happen is we will be calling that implementation method or the implemented method in our base layer. So from this super call, what will happen is we will be invoking the implemented code in our base layer. But for this one, we can have pre-processing section to apply some changes that is done by us. And also we can have post-processing section. So after giving the super call or after the base implementation executed, we also can do some other changes as well, right? So based on the scenario that we need to implement, we need to decide whether we are applying our code to the pre-processing section or the post-processing section, right? Okay, we have already override the insert method. So the procedure. Now let's try to find out or let's try to apply the change that we are trying to do for this table. So what we are trying to do is we are going to use the sequence and we are going to get it for the insert ID. We are going to save it to the database. And at the end, the saved value we are trying to return and show it to the end user through the client application. So those are the things that we are trying to do. In order to use it, so let's try to do with using part first. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the help of sequence and I'm trying to first get the value to the inventory ID. So that's the first thing I'm going to complete. In order to do that, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to have, so I have already created it as well. So maybe I can get it like that. So nev rec underscore dot. So from here, we should be able to access the inventory ID. Okay, the suggesting is not properly happened. So maybe I can quickly have it from my end. Right. So for the pre-processing section, I'm going to use the sequence that I have created. So I think there's a small name changed. So let me quickly get it. Okay, so I got a small space between dot and next value. That was the issue, right? Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm going to access the TRN inventory ID sequence. From that, I'm going to get the next value and I'm going to assign it to the nevrec inventory ID. And then what I will do is, guys, once I applied it to the inventory ID, I'm going to the super call. Right? So inside of the super call, if you can have a look into the insert method, what will happen is the values that we are passing or that values that we are getting from our client application, we will be inserting it to the database. So if you want, you can have a look into your APY file and go to the insert method. So from here, what we are trying to do is we are going to insert the values that we are getting from the new rec. So you are able to see in this section, we are going to insert that section, new rec value list to the TRN inventory tab based on the object ID. So before going the call, what we are trying to do is we are going to assign a value from the sequence and we are going to get it to the new the inventory ID so that the generated value will be passed to the new rec inventory ID, and for the table the newly generated value will be affected, so it will be saved to the database. Even so, we completed that part. Still, there is another requirement that we need to fulfill. Even though we have saved the inventory ID value to the table, we are asked to show it back to the client. So this is your inventory ID like that way. In order to do that, we have to use this add to ATTR method, which is coming under sys client package or the client sys package, and we are asked to return the inventory ID to the client. So how we can do it is, let me show you, right? So there is a way that actually we can do it. I have already created the code, so I will quickly show you in this part. I'm removing this, guys, right? So I have a pre-processing section where I'm having my where I'm using the sequence, and in this part, so it will be the post-processing section. There, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to send the value back to the client application using the ATTR, the value that I got to the got as the inventory ID. So I'm going to get it as inventory ID column. So the new rec inventory ID, I can access the value which is generated from the sequence, and I'm sending it back to the ATTR. So ATTR will be sent to the client application. From that, we are able to visualize the generated inventory ID after saving the particular record. Right. So what we can do is now, after doing all the things, is we can save it. Then we can generate code and deploy it. Okay. Then let me quickly show you the APY file. So how the changes been affected to our insert implementation method. So now, if you can see, there is another section created as cast. And there we are trying to have our sequence used here. And we will be calling to the base method where it take care of all the insertion. And then at the end, we will be returning inventory ID back to the ATTR to show it to the client application, show it in the client application. Right, guys. So I'll apply this code to the script as well, right? So then you can do the necessary changes as well, right? So maybe I can quickly get it from my PLSQL. So where you have to apply it is the PLSQL file, because we are going to have our logics in our .plsql file, right? I'll copy this. And let me have it in the script. So I think I have already opened one. Okay, maybe I'll remove it. So at this point, I will have the code here, right? Okay, now it's there. So you can also get it and use it in your development, right? Remember, guys, the sequence that you have created, it should be same as the sequence script name that you have provided, right? Okay. Then we can move to the next section of our workshop, right? So in the workshop document, we have already completed up to the fourth question. We have done this part, and it's good. So the next section is we are asked to create a new attribute for TRN inventory logical unit, which is the name of picking lead time, right? So it will be some sort of like we have footnote as well, time taken to start picking process, right? So we are asked to create a new attribute, which is a number type and which is mandatory, right? So there we have to have the default value as 0. I'll show you later how we can apply that. But for now, let's try to create an attribute to the TRN inventory logical unit, which is a number type and which is mandatory. So I will show you the recommend way of having default values at this point, right? So I have shown you one way that we can have default values when we are inserting a new attribute or new column to a table which already has data. But in this also, we can do the same way, and this is more recommended, right? So I'll show you that part in the discussion, but for now, let's try to quickly have this attribute in the TRN inventory, right? Okay, so let me go to the cost entity. So we can have a new attribute here. So I will make it as public one, public, and the name should be picking lead time. So I will get a copy from the workshop document, and it should be a number. Okay, so let me get it as number. Should be in capital, right? And then we can have the flags. So I will be going with attribute, mandatory, insertable, updatable, and list of value, right? I'll keep all the flags like this, and let me quickly format it. So you will be able to see the newly added attribute. It's easy. Now, I'm not going to explain it in a deeper manner because we have already discussed the previous things. So we can simply add it like this. And then we can save it. Now we are aware that there is a change happened to all this file set. Even though we are adding a new attribute, even the CRE file is getting updated still. Since we are not able to actually deploy this, what we need to do is we have to apply the necessary change to the CDB file. So we don't need to have all the things. We only need the picking lead time column. So I'm going to get a copy of this, only the column, the relevant column, and I'm going to apply it to the CDB file here, right? So if you want, you can create a new script, same like this, and apply the change. But it's not necessary because we already have a script which is working with TRN inventory tab. So that I'm going to add the same column. Uh, I'm going to add the column to the same script that we used in previously, right? So maybe I'll have this in the shared script as well to make sure that you are not missing it. Right. So I'll have something like a topic here, adding ticking lead time. Now we have added that. Let me deploy to the database, and let me generate the code and deploy the TRN inventory. Right. So yeah, what you can do is you can also quickly add the picking lead time to the cust TRN inventory cust entity and add it to the CDB file and deploy it. Then you can generate and deploy the TRN inventory entity as well. If you have any questions, let me know, right? So if you like, you can put your doubts in the chat. So myself and Pramuditi is there, so we can help you out. One small thing, so we can have a small comment as well. Something that I missed. So let me add a small comment that I have added a new attribute or new column to the tab. So let me get the same thing copied. Yep. So I will put the name, otherwise it will not be cleared. So it's begin lead time. Right. Right, guys. So in workshop document, we asked one more thing related to picking lead time. We are asked to have a default value as 0 when we are adding a picking lead time attribute. Now let's try to do that as well. Okay, so let me get the workshop document aside for a moment. So what we are trying to do here is, I mentioned that from the attribute or from the entity end also, we have one way that we can do the default value change. So how we can do it is, I'm going to remove this semicolon here and I'm going to apply it two curly braces like this. And inside of that, what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to get the support of IntelliSense. So we have actually different properties here that we can apply with the attribute. So we have something like DB table column default value option. So let me try to find it out. DB table column, we have to have default value, right? So we have option like this. And there, what we can do is we can give a default value here. So how we can have it? I'm going to have two inverted commas like this. And inside of that, I will be having 0. And then it should be followed with semicolon, right? Otherwise, it will give us errors. So this is actually a property that we can give to the picking lead time. So as a default value, we can use this DB table column default value option, and we can provide a default value like this. So I'm here giving it as 0. So if you hover around on top of it, you will be able to see the values. So you can see that if you are going to have a value, a number, then you can just have the inverted commas and have the number there. If not, if you are going to have a kind of like a character, then you have to have the two inverted commas, double quotes, and then you have to have one single quote, and inside of that you have to write the value that you are trying to give as the default value for that particular column, right? So here it's simply you have to give it as okay, like this, right? So once you save it, again you can see there is a change happen with the CRE file and the storage files. So if we go to the CRE file quickly, we will be able to witness the change that is happened here. So you can see now for the picking lead time, we have something like this. We have two double quotes. Oh, we have not double quotes, actually the single quotes, right? We have quotes, single quotes here, and inside of that, we are able to see the default value that we have assigned. So it's 0, right? So as the default value, we can get it as 0 for that picking lead time. Now, since we have done a change to our CRE file, we have to apply the same scenario to the CDB. So I'm getting a copy of this and I'm going to apply it to my CDB file, the relevant column. So it's this one, right? Now we have a default value to the picking lead time column, right? So you can deploy it again to the database, and later you can generate code and deploy the TRN inventory as well, right? Okay, so that's the recommended way of applying default value to a column. So why we have to do so is sometimes it's requesting us to apply a default value, and also like sometimes the scenario is the table, there might be data on that, so we cannot apply an empty column to that. It will not allow us to do so. So we cannot just drop all the data and apply it, because it's we have the data on it. So what we need to do is we can have a default value and mitigate such scenarios, right? So then Oracle will allow us to have the column with a default value, even the table contains data, right? So that part actually, so maybe I can give you this one as well. So you have to remember that you have to update the CDB file, right? So let me quickly apply this to the shared script. So then you can get it from there as well, right? So remember to apply the change to the CDB file. Right. Now that section we have completed, right? Let's go to the next part of it. So we have completed this section and we have generated the model. We have applied that change to the database as well. In the seventh question, what we asked is now add a functionality to use inventory ID if it's added manually from the client, or else what we need to do is we need to auto generate a value from the sequence. So we are asked to refer the fourth question and do the necessary modification for that. But the thing is, the modification will be that if user enter a value, then we have to accept that. If not, we have to provide a value from the sequence. So that's the thing we need to do. Right. So if we get back to the PLSQL that we have worked with, we simply previously done was we got the value from the sequence. We have applied it to the inventory ID from the new rec. We passed it to the supercall. So then it will be inserted to the table. At the end, we will be retrieving it back to the client application to show to the end user that this is your inventory ID. Now the next point is now we have to do some modification. We are asked to get it we are asked to get the value if the end user manually enter a value, then we are asked to accept them as well. So then again we have to do some change to our inventory ID. So previously we removed the insertable flag and mandatory flag. So now if we want to allow user to enter value to an inventory ID, then we need to have the insert flag first, right? We don't need to have the mandatory. Then if we have the mandatory, then always the application will expect a user input, so that we are not going to have the mandatory flag, but still we will be having the insert flag. If anyone wants to enter a value, then we can ask they can insert a value and we will be accepting it. But if it's not, then what we'll do is we will be getting a value from the sequence and we will be applying that value to the inventory ID. That's how we are trying to do. So in this point, there might be some issues, right? Because of conflicts. It means that sometimes user given a value which is also generated from the sequence. User already given a value previously, but the same value is generated from the sequence to another record. So there might be conflicts like that. The same value, user also given some value like that, and in the sequence also we are generating a value like that. So in order to mitigate that situation, in order to avoid that kind of situations, we need to do some checking or validations. So let's try to do that validations, and let's take the necessary precautions to handle such situation. And even though like we are handling that, we need to implement what we are requested as well. So let's try to do that part now, right? So I have made I here, it means I have put the I flag again back to the inventory ID, right? So if I save it, we will be able to see that our APY and APV files getting generated, because these flags are being applied to APY and APV files. And the next thing is, we need to check whether when we are applying the, or when we are trying to use sequence, we have to check whether we are whether like the let's take it like this. So we need to check whether user entered a value or not to get value from sequence. So we will be only taking value from the sequence if user doesn't enter any value to that inventory ID field. If not, it means if user has entered a value, then what we have to do is we have to take that value and we have to do some kind of validations, and then we have to use it. Otherwise, we have to check whether the value that is getting from the sequence is existing or not, and then we have to do some kind of validations there. So let's try to go with level, right? So I have already managed the code, guys. So I'll share it with you and I'll explain it to you how I have handled it, right? Okay, let me get it. Right. So before showing you the code, I'll explain you one more point. So here, what I will do is I need to check. It means like if user entered, then we have to get it, and if not, we have to get the value generated from the sequence. And if I'm connecting these two together, right? So in here, the eighth question, it's mentioning that we are asked to create a new method known as get inventory ID, which is applied in the .plsql file. And we have to handle the above requirement at that get inventory ID method and use that method in our code that we need to handle in this functionality. It means we have to use it in our insert method. So there are some hints given for us, right? What we need to do, and also it's mentioning that insert flag should be added again back to the inventory ID. So let me try to quickly complete that part. So I have already created the code for you. So I will get that and I will explain you what I have done here. I have created a method known as get inventory ID, and I made it as an implementation method, guys, right? So I will be applying it to the same code section. So as you can see, I have applied it to the same code section. And here, what I did was I created a function get inventory ID. And there I'm going to pass the new rec from the TRN inventory tab. And there what I'm trying to do is I will first check whether my inventory ID, which is I'm getting from the client application, is null or not. Whether it's null or whether it contains values. If it's null, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to get the support from my sequence, which is a TRN inventory ID sequence. So we have it here. I'm going to use the same sequence to generate the next value. So we have the dual, so it is kind of like a dummy table, right? We can have in order to do some operations. And again, I'm having another attribute as inventory ID, not attribute, sorry, a variable which is a number type. right? I'm using this variable later for my other kind of scenarios, but this cursor I'm creating in order to work with the sequence. And if the inventory ID, the client value is null, what I will do is I will open the cursor. I will be fetch value from that cursor to inventory ID, and I will check whether that value will be existing or not. It means I'm checking whether that relevant inventory ID is existing or not in our table. If it's not, it means if it's not existing, then we are exit from the loop, and we will be going to use that inventory ID, right? So it's in my inventory ID variable which I have created. So I'm going to check whether it's existing or not. If it exists, then we are going for the next inventory ID or next value which is generating from the sequence, because we are going through a loop, right? So if we are going through a loop, we will be going through one by one. If it's there, then we will be going to the next value that we can generate from the inventory ID sequence. In case that value we are taking from the sequence is not there, what we can do is we can use that value as the inventory ID. After using that, we can close the cursor. So I'm not going to explain the cursor concept, but the thing is like when we are using cursors, guys, if we want to use the cursor, we should make sure that we are opening the cursor. And also once we done with the cursor, we have to make sure that we are closing the cursor. Otherwise, it will lead for data leakages, and it will give us long time issues, right? So that if we have opened a cursor, we have to make sure that we are closing the cursor as well. So once we close the cursor, now we have got the value to the inventory ID. So that inventory ID value, we are going to return back to our method, insert method. So because this method, we are going to call it from our insert method. I'll show you how we are going to connect these two methods together. But for now, from this function, what I will do is I'm going to check whether my inventory ID, it means whether I'm getting a value from client application. If not, I will be getting value from the sequence, and I will be validating at this point whether we have any kind of record related to this inventory ID. If it's not, then what will happen is we will be using, or we will be returning that inventory ID back to the place. Let's assume now we are getting a value to the inventory ID based on the end user. That person has entered a value. So then for the new rec, we have a value. So then this condition will be false. So we will be going to the else section, and we will be returning the value that is currently in the new rec inventory ID. It means the value that is entered from the end user. Right, guys? So now we are going to connect this get inventory ID method with the insert method. Let's see how we can do that. So what I'm trying to do is the value that I'm getting, or the value returning from this get inventory ID, I'm trying to take into the new rec inventory ID. So for this location, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to get the value which is returning from the function get inventory ID. Right? So I'm going to call my function, and I'm going to pass the parameter new rec to the function from this location. And once it's done, once the call goes on and once the value is returning from this method, I will be assigning it to the new rec inventory ID, and that value will be going into the super call, and it will be inserted to the database. At the end, we will be getting it to the client application. How we can do it is we can use the client sys dot add to attr, And there for the inventory ID, we will be showing the end result using the new rec inventory ID, and we will be passing it to the ATTR. So that's how we can handle such scenarios. Right, guys? So I'll apply this code to the script as well. So what I did was I created a new method, and using that I'm doing a validation whether if the end user entered a value or not. If the end user is not entered any value, then I'm going to get the help of my sequence, and I will generate a value and I will check whether it's existing or not. If not, then I will be returning that value. Otherwise, if the end user entered a value, then I will be returning that value. So that value will be assigned to the new rec inventory ID, which is in the insert method. So that is will be sent to the super core so that that inventory ID will be saved to the database. At the end, once all the process completed, in order to show the end result to the customer, we will be getting it to the to ATTR, and we will be sending it back to the client application. Right? So let me have this function first, get inventory ID function. Right? So I will be having it to the first for the script text, I will be applying it here. And then I will be applying the updated code as well, right? Updated insert method here as well. So let me get a copy of this. Guys, make sure that when you are doing this, you have to first go to the entity and add the insert flag, right? If not, then you will not be able to add value from the client application. So that makes sure you are adding the I flag back to the entity attribute, right? Okay, so let me save it. So you are able to access the code from the public share as well. Right? So I'll continue from this point that we have completed. So now we are able to complete actually up to this part, right? So we are able to apply a default value, and we were able to check and like kind of like a validation. So if user enter a value, we will be accepting that. And if sequence we are using it, so then we will be doing some kind of a validation and applying it. Like that way, we were able to do some sort of a validation, and we were able to move forward with the necessary development. So the ninth question, actually, this is really, really simple, but which you haven't yet done, right? So we will be creating a brand new entity. That's what we are going to do. It's really simple, but the thing is you haven't still worked with that. So I'll take you through around how to create a brand new component. Oh, sorry, not actually the component, it's entity. So a brand new entity in a customization project. So I'll show you how we can do so. Let me go to the base server. Oh, sorry, the our developer studio. Then here what I'm trying to do is I'll show you how we can create a brand new entity. So I will be taking some instructions from the workshop document, because the name given for us is trn inventory com method. So actually this is this entity is involved with inventory component, where we are going to store communication details of each inventory. It means for a one inventory, we will be able to store lot of communication details. So in this table, we are going to store the communication details for each inventory. That's the purpose of having this trn inventory com method table. Right. So let's try to create the entity. what we need to do is we can go to the component trninv. You can right click on here and go to new, and you can go for entity model. That's also one way you can do. But before that, I'll close this all, right? Yeah, we have to save it. Then what I'm going to do is I will create a new entity. So for that one, I will RMB on top of entities, go for new, and there I'm going to have entity model here. And for the entity name, what I will give is the TRN inventory com method. So the same name from the workshop document I'm going to copy here. So you can see the layer is cast, right? So there won't be any change even though we are going to create a brand new table, right? Brand new entity. So layers will not be affected. It will be in the cast layer. We can give a name, make sure we are not giving any spaces, and then we can go for finish. Now you will be able to see that a newly created entity, and the layer, it's showing us that it's in the cast layer. And this is the format or the template. We can edit this template and add our relevant attributes, right? Okay, so that is how we can add a brand new attribute, or brand new, not attribute, brand new entity to the trninv component, right? So now we have created the new entity. For that, we'll map the values, right? So you can also do it with me because now you have some sort of an idea about mapping attributes. So let's try to map these two attributes first. Inventory com ID, which is a number type, and mandatory attribute, which will be the key. And we can have a public address, which is a string type with the length of 1000, and also it should be a mandatory. So let's not discuss this part now. Let's try to complete these two sections first, and then I will take you through I will take you through these enum and what is it and how we can work with these enums, right? Okay, let me show you this one first. So let's try to quickly add these things. What we need to add. Okay, let me check. Right. You can now, sorry, you can also add it with me. Let's try to first add the inventory com method. So I'll keep it as the key, and I'll copy it from the workshop document. So the same names I will be using. And it will be a number, and I'll keep it like this. Key, mandatory, insertable, and I will enable the list of value functionality. Then the address, I will make it as public instead of private. And it should be a string, so I will make it as text. And the length, it should be given as 1000. And it should be also a mandatory one, so mandatory, insertable, and it's an attribute, and I'll make it as updatable, and I'll enable the list of value functionality as well. So let me update it. So it will looks like this. Now let's try to see what is this enum which is coming from the workshop. So for this communication type and for this default address, we have something known as enum for the data type. And for that data type enum, we have actually a footnote as well. So here it's mentioning for the first enum, it means for this one, give values postal, email, phone, and name the IID as TRN inventory, TRN communication type. So we have to provide the name as TRN communication type, and it should contain postal, email, and phone as values. And the second one, enum2, the footnote follows here. We have to use FND Boolean IID, which is coming from FND bash component for the default address. Let's try to work with the first one at this moment, and let's get back to the FND bash component, FND Boolean later after this. So enums, those are known as enumerations, right? So enums, the explanation will be enumerations, and they will be like enumerations is a set of values or set of fixed set of values, right? Fixed set of values that we can use in an attribute, right? So enums can be created with set of fixed values. We can use those values as list. So when you are working with that particular attribute, so for that particular attribute, we can have those values as a list, right? So if you are having set of particular fixed value set, then we can use them in an enumeration, and we can use it as the data type for a particular attribute. So I'll show you how we can do so, right? I will show you how we can create a enumeration and how we can use a enumeration. Right. As for the first thing, I'll show you how to create a enumeration. So what we need to do is, guys, right? I will make it like this. So I'm going to work with enumerations. So we can go for component, RMB on top of it, new, and we have different set of options here, and I'm going for enumeration module there, right? We have the TRNINV component, we are RMB on top of it, and we are going for the new option. There we have this enumeration module. So if I click on that, I will be getting a window to provide a name for that enumeration. So for that name, in the workshop document, it's given us that you should use TRN communication type as the name. So I'm going to use that same name, right? Right. So here I'm going to paste it. So we have to make sure that we are not using any spaces. So the enumeration name will be TRN communication type. And if we finish it, now you will be able to see that there is a newly created section known as enumerations here. Under TRNINV component, we will be getting a enumeration section folder, and inside of that, we will be getting a enumeration created in the cast layer. So for this enumeration, we can map the values that we need to get for this list. It means for this enumeration, we can map the fixed list of values. So here, the way we are mapping it is, we have to have the value and the name for that, right? So let's quickly map the values. So it's given in the footnote of the workshop document, right? So what we need to map it is, we need to map postal for the communication type, postal, and as another value we want to get as a, okay, let me copy the same one, and it will be not postal, but it will be email. So this is the second value, and I'll take another value. It will be phone, right? So these will be the values that is coming under my enumeration, right? So maybe I'll give this in the chat, not chat actually, in the public share. So enumeration. Okay, spelling mistake. Right, it's there, right? So you can refer to the shared script. I have applied the code there. Now, we have created a enumeration. It means we are having a enumeration which contains fixed set of values. We have values as postal, email, phone. Now we need to look into a way that we are going to use this enumeration in our entity. So where we are going to use it is the newly created entity that we have here, right? So let me quickly use it or create it here. So the column name will be communication type, right? And I'll make it as a public column, right? Public, and I'll name it as communication type. And the way that we are referring it is bit different compared to the other ways that we were used the types. So how we are going to use it? So you can get the support of IntelliSense. Then you will be able to find all the set of options. So here we are using enumeration, and inside of the brackets we can have the name of our enumeration like this, and then we can have the flags. So I'll make it as attribute, mandatory, insertable, updatable, and list of value functionality available. So this is how we can map enumeration with a attribute, right? And let me save it. And I'll show you some important points that is coming under enumerations, right? So yeah, let me show you them. If I go to the TRN communication type, generated files, you can see that we have API and APY file got generated. So it's kind of like this. For the enum file, okay, let me get a pointer. This is file set that I have mapped. So we get the API, APY files generated, but we don't get any kind of free file, and also we don't get any APV files generated to the enum files, right? We only get API, APY. We don't get any kind of free file, and also we don't get any APV file. Actually, I missed to map the APV file. We don't get APV file as well, right? So only APY, API files are getting for us when we are working with enumeration. When we generate enumeration, we only get those files. Right. Then, if we go into APY, so you will be looking into, like, you will be getting some more information about the enumeration that we have created. So based on the values that we have mapped in our enumeration, we will be getting some information here. So some methods here in our API, right? So if I show you the API, we will be getting some constants here, public declarations. It means for each and every value that we have, we will be getting set of constant variables which contain DB values, right? It means why we are having these DB values and the client values. It means now if you can see here, in the enumeration, we have set of values. That's true. And when we looking into our API as public declarations, we have three constant variables with the DB values. So these will be the DB values, database values. Why I'm emphasizing these things as DB values? It because actually when we are working with our application, we have the translation option. So the client value may be different based on the translation. It means that if let's get it as Swedish. So if our application is in Swedish, the enumeration values will be shown in Swedish. But the thing is, those all, even though the client value is shown in Swedish, it will be still mapped to the database value, and that value will be the value that is stored in the database. It means the postal. So these are the values that we are stored in the database: DB postal, DB email, DB phones, and those values we have these constant emails and phones. But based on the application language, the way we are showing the list of values might be different. So in order to handle that, actually we have decode and encode option, right? So this decode option help us, sorry, it's encode. The decode option help us to get the DB value and return the client value. So we will be accepting the DB value and it will be translated and it will show back the client value to the end client application. For the encoding, what will happen it will be let me get it from here. It will be accepting the client value and it will translate to the database value. So actually these are using in order to get the support of translation. It means since we use translations in our application, in order to translate this fixed list, we need to use this decode and encode option. And also we have set of values as DB values, which will not be translated, but for those DB values, we will be having set of clients values as well. So those clients value will be translated based on the language or depend on the application language. The values, the client values will get translated. Right? Okay, so I have shown you how to use the enum, right? I mean enumeration, how we can map it with our entities. So it's in TR and inventory com method. We have used it here. So then let me show you the other enumeration that we need to use. It's the enumeration 2. And if you refer to the footnote, it mentioning us that we need to use FND base component. And there we have FND Boolean IID enumeration, and we are asked to use that in the default address. So it's mentioning us guys that we don't need to create that enumeration from the scratch. It means here what we did was we have created it from the scratch and we have used it in our development. But in this one, for the default address, we don't need to use it, or we don't need to create it from the scratch. But now what we are doing is we are going to get the support of our build home, so that we are going to refer the FND BAS component, and there we have enumeration section which is already in our database. So we are going to use that, or we are going to refer that. So let me quickly get it. So it should be FND Boolean, right? This one. If we look into the entity, so you will be able to see that the enumeration name Boolean, and for that we have two values. One is false, another one is true. So we are going to refer this FND Boolean enumeration, which is coming from the build home in our development, right? So we don't need to actually create this enumeration part from the scratch. Right. So how we can do it? Same like this. So I'm getting it as a public attribute, and the attribute name will be default address as I can remember. So let me quickly check. Yeah, it should be yes. And I'm going to use enumeration, right? And here, what I'm going to use is fnd boolean, right? So we have the boolean here from the fnd-base component, fnd-bs component, and I'm going to use it here. And we can map the flags as we wish. So then if I format it, you can see now we are able to create a original entity in the cast layer. So here what we did was we have one enumeration which is originally created by us, and the other enumeration we have referred the existing components which is coming from the build home, and we have used it or we have referred it in our development. Right. So maybe I'll give the whole scenario now in the chat. Oh, not in the chat, actually in the script. Here, right? So you can refer it and you can get the support of it, right? So once we're done, we can generate code, right? So I'm going to do what I will do is I will first deploy the enumeration because it's something that I have created. And then what I will do is I will generate the code in my trn inventory com method, which I have created first, right? So you can see now the files are getting generated. I have the API, APV, APY, and CRE file. It's there. So you know that just deploying this will not work because the CRE file is not affected or not getting deployed in the customization layer. So what I will do is I will be getting the whole table creation script to my CDB file, right? So let me get it copied to the CDB file. So I'll keep it in the table definition section. And I will be applying the index part as well. So it helps us to query the data faster. So we have the index section as well here. So I'm going to have it because this is something that we are originally creating, so that I'm going to apply this section. Yeah, this section to the CDB file as well. Right? So then you can have some comments that you have added new table known as trn inventory com method tab. And yeah, let me add that as well. So let me try to use one comment that I have created here, and I'm going to duplicate here, and I will add as added a new table which is known as trn inventory com method, right? So I'm going to have that in here, and then we can save it. So what you need to do is you can first deploy the CDB file, right? And then you can generate and deploy the code in the trn inventory com method entity. Right, guys. So maybe I'll put the CDB file later, right? So it means like full CDB file I'll put in the public share later, right? So other codes I have been already shared in the script text, so you can use it, right? And then now we have created the enumerations. We have used it in our new entity, and we have worked with the CDB file, history comments, and we have deployed the CDB, and also we have deployed the entity, right? So actually, there is one more small thing remaining. So regarding the exercise, so if I quickly show you that part as well. Here for the default address, they are mentioning us that we have to have a default value as false, right? But the thing is, it's mentioning us that remember to modify the prepare insert and use the decode value to get the default value and display it to client. So now you know why we use decode values. So if I quickly show you it in my whiteboard that I have prepared for you. Right. So what actually happened here is the client value, we have one value. And if we encode that, then the value will be the if we want to encode a client value, we will be able to get the DB value. If we want to if we have the DB value and if we want to decode it to get the client value, so we have to go through, we have to get the DB value, we have to decode it, and then we have to go to we can get the client value. So this is how the process works. If we are getting the client value, if we encode it, then we are able to get the DB value. If we have the DB value and if we decode it, we can get the client value. So the post is, I think it's from Swedish. The poster, if we translate it to Swedish, it will be post, right? So that's why I took a different name here, right? So what will happen here is, guys, we are asking to show or get the decode value, and we have to display the client the proper value. It means we have to get the DB value first, like this. We have to decode it, and then to the client we have to show the relevant output based on the language or the depending on the language that client application is in. So let's try to get this up and running as well as for the last point for today, right? So how we can do it is, so what we have to do now, let's have a look into that one. So there are some hints given for us that we need to use the prepare insert. So let's try to use the prepare insert method and let's try to override and do the necessary change, right? So we are asked to use the prepare insert and we are asked to do the decode and display the client value to the client application based on depend on the language, right? So how to do that is, I'm going to get the PLSQL file because currently in my scenario I don't have the PLSQL cust file here, so that I'm going to take the PLSQL cust file from that source. Yes, I want to create it, and into that I'm going to override the prepare insert. So how we can do it is, in the implementation section I'm going to have override. Okay, so I'm going to get the support of IntelliSense to get a suggestion. So I want to actually override the prepare insert. So let's see whether we can get the prepare insert here. Yeah, we have the prepare insert. And what I'm trying to do is, once it's done with the preparation, I will be including a code like this. So I have already created it, right? So that I'll quickly add that part to the relevant location. So for the post processing code section, I'm going to apply a code like this. I'll explain you what will be the code. So let me show you previously. Okay. Maybe I'll keep it like that because otherwise, since it's too zoomed, that you will be not able to clearly see. Right. So what I have done here is, guys, this is a bug. So it's something that is coming from the tool related with the dependency. So we will not worry on that now, right? Let's keep it like this so it won't affect for our development. So what I'm trying to do here is, so in the prepare insert, if you go into that, so if I go into the APY prepare insert section, what we are trying to do here is we will be clearing the ATTR and then we will be making the prepare insert section. So when we try to press, I mean like in the client application, if we try to add a new record by pressing the add sign, add button, what will happen is this prepare insert will be called, so that at that point as a default value I'm trying to show the value as false for the default address. But the thing is, I'm not going to show it as false. It means the DB value, but I will decode it. So this is how we can decode it. It means I'm going to use the fnd boolean API dot db false constant variable, and I'm going to decode it using the decode method, which is coming under fnd boolean API. And then it will be getting the client value, and that relevant client value will be sent to the ATTR to show it in the client application, so that based on the or depend on the client application language, we will be able to show the false value or the client value based on the DB false. It means we have the DB false in our database end, but we are not showing that hard coded value in the database end, but what we are showing is the client value of it. So the client value will be translated based on the languages or based on the language that we are using in our client application. Maybe this Swedish, maybe other language. So based on the depend on that language, we will be able to see the client value when we are trying to add a new record, right? So for the default address, we will be getting a default value relevant to the DB false value, right? So we can just apply it like this and then we can save it. So let me generate and deploy the code. Right. We are able to deploy it. So you don't need to like worry on this one because it's coming something that is coming from the IDE from the developer studio based on dependency issue. So it will not affect for our development. So you don't need to worry. But what you need to do is you have to decode the value for the DB false. It means DB false is the value that is in the database. We are getting it and we are going to convert it to the client value, and we will be showing it in our client application. So let me quickly apply this code to the script as well, guys, so then you can give it a try later. Right. So here I have applied that code as well. So you can give it a try on that part. Right, guys. So what you can do is you can get some time later and complete up to this part. And the script is available in the public share day 4. So it's under the scripts. So you can get it and you can complete your work. Right. And also I will copy the CDB file here. So then in case if you missed anything, you can get it copied from this location and use it in your development as well. Right. So for today, we will be stopping the session from here. We will be concluding the session from here. And tomorrow, I'll continue from this part, right? So there is something like creating a new view. Okay, so I'll take you through from that, and we have to work with states as well. So I'll show you that part as well. And this thing is actually the same thing that we have done previously. It means creating a sequence. The difference of it is that we are not accepting any user inputs, but we will be just using the sequence and get the values to the inventory com id, right? So that's the thing that actually you have to do. So this is something that you can work with. And from tomorrow, tomorrow we will be starting from the question 12, and we will complete the rest of the discussion tomorrow. Okay, so then have a good day, guys. See you all.